A 6-year-old girl sits in front of investigators, her voice steady as she reveals the unthinkable. Mrs. Helen opened the door. She saw me crying. She saw Pastor David. Then she just closed the door and went back upstairs. The pastor's wife knew, and she did nothing. Before we dive in, comment where in the world you are watching from and don't forget to click subscribe. The October rain had been falling for 3 days straight, turning the streets of Riverside into rivers of fallen leaves and mud. Sarah Mitchell stood at her kitchen window, watching the gray clouds roll past, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. The kitchen still smelled of the chicken she'd roasted for dinner, though she'd barely touched it herself. Single mothers didn't have the luxury of skipping meals, but lately her appetite had been inconsistent, driven more by necessity than desire. Her daughter Emma, 6 years old with wild auburn curls that refused to be tamed and a gap-toothed smile that could light up entire rooms, had been at Pastor David's house since after school. He'd offered to help with her reading 3 weeks ago, said she was falling behind the other first graders, and he wanted to give her extra attention. The concern in his voice had seemed so genuine, so pastoral. Sarah had been grateful. Single mothers didn't turn down help, especially from pillars of the community, especially from men of God who seemed to care about children's futures. Emma had been excited at first, proud to be getting special lessons from the pastor himself. She'd packed her little pink backpack with extra care those first few Tuesdays and Thursdays, making sure she had her favorite pencil with the unicorn eraser, her reading workbook with the dog-eared pages, and the granola bar she always saved for after lessons. Sarah had felt fortunate, blessed even, that someone so important would take time for her daughter. Her phone buzzed on the counter, pulling her from her thoughts. Pastor David's wife, Helen. "Sarah, Emma's ready whenever you want to pick her up. She did wonderfully today. David was just commenting on how much progress she's making." "That's great," Sarah said, forcing brightness into her voice. "I'll be there in 15 minutes. "No rush, dear. Take your time. The roads are awful with this rain." The drive took 12 minutes through the wet streets, windshield wipers working overtime against the downpour. Sarah passed the elementary school where Emma spent her days, the library where they went every Saturday, the ice cream shop that was their special Friday tradition. Riverside was a small town, the kind where everyone knew everyone, where people left their doors unlocked and trusted their neighbors. It was why Sarah had moved here after the divorce, seeking safety and community for herself and Emma. She pulled up to the 2-story colonial with its perfect white fence and American flag hanging limp in the rain. The house looked like something from a magazine, all neat flower beds and trimmed hedges, a testament to suburban perfection. The porch light was on, casting a warm yellow glow against the gray evening. Helen met her at the door before Sarah could even knock, all smiles and casserole recommendations, her pearls perfectly arranged, her cardigan immaculate. "Sarah, come in. Come in. You're getting soaked." "I'm fine. Just here to grab Emma." "Oh, but you must be freezing. Let me get you some tea. I just made a fresh pot." "Really, I'm okay. We need to get home for dinner." Helen's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course. She's just gathering her things upstairs. David's already left for the evening prayer service. He said Emma made real progress today with her phonics. She's such a bright little thing. Sarah nodded, making small talk about the weather, about the church bake sale coming up, about anything that filled the awkward waiting time. The house smelled like cinnamon and vanilla, some candle burning somewhere. Everything was so clean it almost didn't look lived in. No shoes by the door, no mail on the table, no dishes in the sink visible from where Sarah stood in the foyer. Emma came down the stairs slowly, each step deliberate, her little pink backpack dragging behind her on the carpeted steps. The sound it made, that soft thump, 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 seemed too loud in the quiet house. Something was different. The child who usually bounded downstairs like a puppy, who couldn't wait to tell her mother every detail of her day, now stood silent at the bottom step, her eyes fixed on the hardwood floor, her small hands clenched at her sides. "Baby, you okay?" Sarah knelt down, ignoring Helen's presence, touching Emma's cheek. The skin was cold, clammy. The girl flinched, just slightly, but enough to send ice through Sarah's veins. "Tired," Emma whispered, her voice small and flat. Helen laughed, that high, tinkling laugh that suddenly sounded wrong, like wind chimes in a horror movie. "Oh, they worked so hard on her phonics today. David really pushes them, you know. Wants them to excel. She's probably exhausted, poor thing. He said they read for nearly 2 hours straight." 2 hours? Emma could barely sit still for 20 minutes during homework. Sarah's stomach tightened, but she pushed the thought away. That's quite a long time for a 6-year-old. Well, David believes in dedication. Success doesn't come from half measures. Helen's voice had an edge to it, defensive. Sarah took Emma's hand. It was cold, the fingers limp. "Say thank you to Mrs. Helen." "Thank you," Emma said to the floor, barely audible. "You're so welcome, sweetheart." "Same time Thursday?" Sarah wanted to say no, wanted to grab her daughter and run, but she had nothing concrete, just instinct. "We'll see. Emma might be coming down with something." "Oh dear. Well, plenty of rest and fluids. David will be disappointed if she misses Thursday. He was just saying how much he enjoys working with her." The words made Sarah's skin crawl, though she couldn't articulate why. She thanked Helen and ushered Emma out into the rain, holding her coat over the girl's head as they hurried to the car. The ride home was silent except for the rhythmic swish of windshield wipers and the drum of rain on the roof. Sarah kept glancing in the rearview mirror. Emma stared out the window, her small body pressed against the car door as if trying to melt into it, her breath fogging the glass. "Did you have fun, sweetheart?" "Mm-hmm. What did you and Pastor David do?" Emma's reflection went still, her eyes unfocused. "Read books." "What kind of books?" "I don't remember." Sarah's stomach tightened again. Emma remembered everything. She could recite entire episodes of her favorite cartoons, could tell you what she had for lunch 3 days ago, could describe in detail every present she'd ever received. Her memory was remarkable, a source of pride for Sarah and amazement for her teachers. "You don't remember the books you read for 2 hours?" "No." "Did you read in Pastor David's study?" A pause. "Too long." "Yes." "Was it just you and him?" "Yes." "Where was Mrs. Helen?" "Upstairs, making dinner. It smelled like chicken." The detail felt wrong somehow. Too specific after claiming not to remember the books. Sarah tried a different approach. "Did Pastor David give you a snack?" "I'm not hungry." "But you love snacks after school." "I'm not hungry." Emma's voice cracked, sharp and desperate, so unlike her usual sunny disposition. Sarah let it drop, but her heart was racing. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. At home, Emma headed straight for the stairs, moving with purpose. "I want to take a bath." "Don't you want a snack first?" "I bought those cookies you like. The chocolate chip ones with the..." "Bath first." "Honey, you usually..." "I said bath first." The sharpness in Emma's voice was shocking. She never yelled, never snapped. Sarah followed her up the stairs, something pulling at her instincts. That ancient maternal alarm that sounds without words, passed down through generations of mothers who knew when their children were in danger. Emma was already in the bathroom, running the water too hot, steam filling the small space, fogging the mirror. "Honey, that's too hot." "Let me... I can do it." Emma's voice cracked, sharp and desperate, her small hands shaking as she adjusted the faucet. Sarah adjusted the temperature anyway, watching her daughter's face in the steamy mirror. Emma's eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. She was holding something in, the way Sarah herself had learned to hold things in years ago when her own marriage was falling apart, when she had to be strong for Emma, when crying wasn't an option. "Do you want bubbles? Your favorite lavender ones?" Emma nodded, still not meeting her eyes, her small body rigid. Sarah poured in the bubble bath, watched the foam rise, and asked softly, "Do you want me to stay?" "No. I can do it myself." "You're only 6, baby." "I can do it myself." The desperation in Emma's voice was heartbreaking. Sarah left her to bathe but stood in the hallway just outside the door listening. The splashing sounds seemed frantic, scrubbing sounds. too vigorous for a 6-year-old's bath. She could hear Emma whimpering softly, little sounds of pain or distress. Sarah's hand went to the doorknob 3 times but pulled back each time. Give her space. Maybe she really was just tired. After 30 minutes, she knocked softly. Emma. You've been in there a while, honey. 5 more minutes. Your fingers are going to be prunes. 5 more minutes, please, Mommy. The please broke Sarah's heart. Emma only said please like that when she was scared. Sarah waited, counting down the seconds, each one feeling like an eternity. At exactly 5 minutes, she knocked again. Emma, I need you to come out now. The water drained, that sucking gurgle sound. More silence. Then Emma opened the door, wrapped in her pink towel with the unicorns they'd picked out at Target last month. Her skin was red from scrubbing, especially her legs and stomach. The redness looked painful, raw. Baby, you scrubbed too hard. I was dirty. You weren't dirty. You just came from Pastor David's house. Emma's face crumpled for just a second before she pulled it back together. I need to get dressed. Let me help you. I can do it myself. She ran to her room and closed the door, not quite slamming it but close. Sarah stood outside, her hand on the doorknob, every instinct screaming. She knocked softly. Can I come in? I'm getting dressed. I'll wait. 5 minutes passed. 10. The door finally opened. Emma was wearing her longest pajamas, the winter ones with feet, even though the house was warm, even though it was only early October. The pajamas were fleece, meant for January cold snaps, not mild autumn evenings. Those are going to be hot, baby. I'm cold. You just took a hot bath. I'm still cold. Sarah sat on the edge of Emma's bed, the one with the princess sheets they'd picked out together last spring. Emma had been so excited about them, had insisted on making the bed herself every morning so she could see Princess Belle and Ariel looking up at her. Come sit with Mommy. Emma climbed up slowly, carefully, as if moving hurt. She sat at the far end, leaving space between them that had never been there before. Emma was a cuddler, always had been, the kind of child who climbed into her mother's lap without asking, who held hands without prompting, who gave hugs that could cure any bad day. Did something happen today? No. Emma, you can tell me anything. You know that, right? Anything at all. Even if someone told you not to tell. Even if someone said it was a secret. Mommy needs to know if something happened. The little girl's face crumpled, but she pulled it back together with visible effort. I'm just tired. Can I go to sleep? It's only 6:30, baby. Please. I just want to sleep. Sarah's throat felt tight. Okay, baby. Okay. She tucked Emma in, pulled the covers up to her chin, kissed her forehead, felt the fever heat there. You're warm. I'm cold. Let me get the thermometer. No, I just want to sleep. Sarah backed off, recognizing the edge of hysteria in her daughter's voice. Okay. Sleep, baby. I'll be right downstairs if you need me. She left the door cracked open, the hallway light spilling in the way Emma liked, went downstairs, poured a glass of wine she didn't drink, and paced. The chicken from dinner sat congealed on the stove. She couldn't eat, couldn't think, couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible had happened to her daughter. She called her sister Diane, the only person who would understand without judging. She's acting strange, Sarah said without preamble when Diane answered. Won't talk to me. Took a 30-minute bath, scrubbing herself raw. She's wearing winter pajamas and says she's cold. Di, I'm scared. Scared of what? I don't know. That's what's making me crazy. I don't know what I'm scared of, but I'm terrified. Diane was quiet for a moment, and Sarah could hear her moving to another room, away from her husband and kids. She was at the pastor's? Yeah. David and Helen Warren. He was helping with her reading. Another pause. Longer this time. Sarah, I don't want to plant ideas in your head, but maybe just check on her before you go to bed. Make sure she's okay. Look for anything unusual. Like what? I don't know. Bruises. Anything that seems off. You're scaring me. I'm sorry. I just trust your gut. You're her mother. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Sarah hung up and stood at the bottom of the stairs, staring up into the darkness of the second floor. The house suddenly felt different, like the air had changed weight, like invisible things were pressing down on her from all sides. She climbed the stairs slowly, each step creaking under her feet like warnings. Emma's door was still cracked open. Sarah pushed it wider, let the hallway light spill in. Her daughter was curled into a ball, facing the wall, her breathing too quick for sleep, too shallow. Emma? I'm sleeping. No, you're not, baby. You're breathing too fast. No response. Sarah crossed to the bed and sat down carefully, trying not to jostle Emma. She reached out to rub her back. That soothing motion she'd done since Emma was an infant, and that's when she felt it. Something damp. Wetness seeping through the fleece pajamas. Emma? Did you have an accident? No. The response was immediate, panicked. It's okay if you did, honey. You haven't had an accident in years, but if you're sick, I didn't. Leave me alone. But Sarah was already turning on the bedside lamp, already pulling back the covers with trembling hands. The wetness had soaked through the back of Emma's pajamas, spreading across the fleece. But it wasn't yellow. It was dark, reddish-brown against the pink fleece and the princess sheets. Blood. Sarah's heart stopped. Everything stopped. Time, breath, thought. The world narrowed to that dark stain, that terrible evidence that something unspeakable had happened to her baby. Emma. Her voice didn't sound like her own. It came from somewhere deep and primal. Emma, baby, are you bleeding? Emma started crying. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep and broken. The kind that shatters mothers' hearts and souls. I'm sorry, Mommy. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry for what? Baby, where are you hurt? Let me see. Sarah's hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip the covers. No! Don't look at me. Please don't look at me. Emma, I need to see where you're hurt. Please, baby. Emma was sobbing now, full body shaking, her small frame convulsing with the force of her tears. He said it was a secret. He said you'd be mad. He said God would punish me if I told. He said, Sarah's vision tunneled, the room tilted, and she gripped the bed frame to steady herself. Who said? Pastor David said that? Emma nodded frantically, her face crumpling. He said it was special. He said God wanted him to. He said I was chosen. He said don't tell or... She couldn't finish, the sobs taking over completely. Sarah stood up so fast the room spun. Her phone. Where was her phone? She ran to her bedroom, Emma's sobs following her down the hall like ghosts. She grabbed her phone from the nightstand with shaking hands. Her fingers fumbled on the screen. She had to try 3 times to dial 911. 911. What's your emergency? My daughter. Sarah's voice broke. She took a breath, tried again. My daughter, she's 6 years old. She's bleeding. Someone hurt her. I need help. Please, God, I need help right now. Ma'am, calm down. Where is the bleeding coming from? Sarah couldn't say it. The words wouldn't form in her mouth. They were too terrible, too monstrous to speak aloud. If she said it, it would be real. She was with... She forced air into her lungs. I think someone sexually assaulted my daughter. The world crystallized into sharp focus. The operator's voice became authoritative, calm, a lifeline in the chaos. Ma'am, I need you to stay on the line with me. Do not touch your daughter or the bedding. An ambulance and police are on their way to your location. What's your address? Sarah rattled it off, her voice mechanical, somewhere between hysteria and shock. Please hurry. Please. They're 2 minutes away. Ma'am, has your daughter told you who hurt her? Pastor David Warren at Riverside Community Church. There was a pause, the smallest hesitation that spoke volumes. The operator knew him. Of course she did. Everyone in Riverside knew Pastor David. "Ma'am, the police will need to speak with you and your daughter when they arrive. Try to keep her calm if you can. Don't ask her questions about what happened. The forensic interviewers will need to talk to her. Do you understand?" "I don't understand. My baby is bleeding. Why can't I ask her what happened? Why can't I help her?" "I know this is difficult, ma'am. I know you want to help. But we need to preserve her testimony. Any questions you ask her now could compromise the investigation. Don't clean her up. Don't change her clothes. Don't wash the bedding. I know it's hard, but it's important for evidence. Evidence." The word made Sarah's knees weak. This wasn't a nightmare. This was real. Her baby's princess sheets were soaked with blood because Pastor David, because a man of God had. She couldn't finish the thought. Couldn't let her mind go there. "Ma'am? Are you still with me?" "Yes. I'm here. The ambulance is 1 minute away. Stay on the line." Sarah ran back to Emma's room. The little girl was sitting up now, hugging her knees to her chest, rocking back and forth in that terrible way that trauma victims do. "Am I in trouble? Is God going to send me to hell?" Pastor David said. "No, baby. No, no, no." Sarah dropped to her knees beside the bed, not touching her daughter because the operator said not to. Every instinct to hold her child being violently suppressed. "You're not in trouble. You did nothing wrong. Do you hear me? Nothing. This is not your fault." But I went with him. To the special room. He said it was for special children. I should have said no, I should have. "No, stop. Listen to mommy. This is not your fault. You're a child. He's an adult. He's the one who did wrong, not you. Never you. But he said little girls who tell secrets go to hell. He said God tells him everything. He said..." Red and blue lights flashed through the window, painting the walls in alternating colors. Sirens, the sound of salvation or the sound of everything falling apart. Sarah couldn't tell which. She heard pounding on the front door, voices calling out. She ran downstairs, nearly falling in her haste, and unlocked the door with shaking hands. 2 police officers stood on her porch, a young woman with kind eyes and an older man with gray hair. Behind them, paramedics waited with equipment and a stretcher. All of them wore expressions of professional concern mixed with something else. Horror, disgust, rage, carefully contained. "My daughter's upstairs," Sarah said, and the tears started then, hot and fast and unstoppable. "Please help my daughter, please." The female officer, her name tag read Martinez, took Sarah's arm gently. "I'm Officer Martinez. This is Officer Reynolds. Can you take us to her?" They climbed the stairs, a strange procession of uniformed people invading her home to bear witness to her daughter's trauma. The paramedics went to Emma first while the officers stood in the doorway, taking in the scene with careful eyes. Sarah watched them examine her baby, saw them exchange looks heavy with meaning, saw the male paramedic shake his head slightly in that way that meant this is bad, very bad. One paramedic, a woman with gray streaking her dark hair, knelt beside Emma. "Hi, sweetie. My name is Patricia. I'm going to help you, okay? Can you tell me where it hurts?" Emma pointed, her little finger shaking. The paramedics exchanged another look. "We need to transport her to County General," Patricia said quietly to Officer Martinez. "They have a SART unit there." "What's that?" Sarah asked, her voice raw. Officer Martinez turned to her, compassion in her eyes. "Sexual assault response team. They're specially trained for these cases. Pediatric specialists, forensic nurses, counselors. They'll do an examination, collect evidence, and talk to Emma in a way that won't traumatize her any more than she already has been. Further," Sarah's voice rose despite herself, "she's already traumatized. Look at her. My baby is broken, and you're talking about not traumatizing her further." "I know, ma'am. I know. We're going to help her. I promise you we're going to help her." Officer Reynolds, the older man, was on his radio, his voice low but urgent. "We need detectives at 445 Maple Street. Suspected sexual assault of a minor, approximately 6 years old. Perpetrator identified as David Warren, pastor at Riverside Community Church. A pause then. Yeah, that David Warren. We need someone at his residence immediately. He's a flight risk given his position. Emma was lifted onto a stretcher carefully, gently, wrapped in blankets that weren't princess pink. She reached for Sarah, her small hand grasping at air. Mommy, I don't want to go. Please don't make me go. I'm coming with you, baby. I'm right here. I'm not leaving you. In the ambulance, Sarah held Emma's hand while the paramedics checked her vital signs, started an IV for fluids, spoke in medical terminology that Sarah only half understood. The bleeding had stopped, they said, but she needed to be examined properly, thoroughly. Internal injuries, possible infection, evidence collection. The words floated around Sarah like debris after an explosion. Officer Martinez rode with them, sitting across from Sarah in the cramped space. Can you tell me what happened tonight? How you discovered the abuse. Sarah recounted it all, her voice flat and mechanical. The quiet ride home from Pastor David's house, the frantic bath, the winter pajamas in October, the blood. She said he took her to a basement room, a special room. Said God wanted him to do it. Said she'd go to hell if she told. Martinez's jaw tightened, muscle jumping beneath skin. She wrote in her notebook with sharp, angry strokes. How long has she been going to his house? 3 weeks, every Tuesday and Thursday after school. Helen, his wife, is always there. Or she said she was always there. Was she there today when you picked Emma up? She answered the door. Said David had already left for evening prayer service. Talked about how hard they'd worked on Emma's phonics. Sarah's voice turned bitter. 2 hours, she said. What 6-year-old reads for 2 hours straight? Did Emma say whether Helen was in the room with them during the abuse? No. She said Helen was upstairs, that she could smell chicken cooking. Martinez wrote faster. And Emma's behavior was different when you picked her up? Completely different. She's normally so bright, so talkative. Tonight she wouldn't look at me, wouldn't talk. Pulled away when I touched her. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't. I never thought. Her voice broke. You couldn't have known, Martinez said gently. These predators are experts at hiding. At seeming trustworthy, the hospital came into view, its bright lights harsh against the dark rain that had started again. County General, a sprawling building that Sarah had only ever visited once before, when Emma had broken her arm falling off the monkey bars. That had been terrifying enough. This was something else entirely. This was every parent's nightmare made real. They wheeled Emma through doors marked emergency, down corridors that smelled of antiseptic and fear and sickness. A woman in scrubs met them, her face gentle despite the late hour. I'm Dr. Reeves. I'm the pediatric emergency physician on duty tonight, and I work with the SART team. She crouched to Emma's level, made herself small and non-threatening. Hi there, sweetheart. That's a pretty brave face you have. We're going to take very good care of you here, okay? You're safe now. Emma looked at Sarah, panic in her eyes. Mommy stays? Absolutely, Dr. Reeves said without hesitation. Mommy stays right with you the whole time. I won't do anything without telling you first, and you can say stop whenever you need to. You're in charge here, okay? Emma nodded slowly, some of the terror leaving her face. They went to a special room, painted soft blue with stuffed animals on shelves and children's drawings on the walls. Nothing like a hospital room at all. It looked more like a daycare or a library, deliberately child-friendly. Dr. Reeves explained each step before she did it, asked permission, moved slowly and carefully. Sarah held Emma's hand the entire time, whispering comfort, crying silently, watching her daughter shrink into herself as the examination progressed. The examination took an hour of Sarah watching her daughter be poked and prodded and photographed, an hour of clinical terms like genital trauma, and anal fissures, and evidence of forced penetration, an hour of Emma crying softly, dissociating, going to some far place where mothers couldn't follow, where pain couldn't reach. Dr. Reeves collected samples, took photographs, documented everything with professional precision and obvious heartbreak. She had done this before, Sarah realized. Many times. The efficiency spoke of horrible experience. When it was over, Emma was given clean clothes, not her princess pajamas, those were evidence now, and apple juice. She sat on Sarah's lap, small and hollow-eyed, and stared at nothing. Dr. Reeves spoke with Officer Martinez outside, their voices low but urgent. Sarah could see them through the window, could see the doctor shaking her head, could see Martinez's hand tighten on her pen. A detective arrived, a woman with short gray hair and tired eyes who introduced herself as Detective Susan Brennan. She had the look of someone who had seen too much, who carried the weight of other people's trauma like rocks in her pockets. She pulled up a chair beside them but didn't rush, didn't push. "Emma," she said softly, "my job is to talk to kids about really hard things. But not tonight. Tonight, you just rest. Tomorrow or maybe the next day when you're feeling a little bit better, we'll talk in a special place. A place that's just for kids who need to tell grown-ups about things that happened to them. Does that sound okay?" Emma nodded against Sarah's chest, her small body trembling. "Sarah." Detective Brennan turned her attention to Sarah, her eyes kind but direct. "We've sent officers to Pastor Warren's residence. His wife confirmed he was home. We're bringing him in for questioning now." "That's it?" Sarah's voice was harsh, loud in the quiet room. "Questioning? My daughter is bleeding, she has internal injuries, and that monster is just being questioned?" "I understand your anger," Brennan said, her voice steady and calm. "But we have to follow proper procedure. We need to build a case that will stand up in court, that will put him away for the rest of his life. I want you to know, Sarah, I believe your daughter. The physical evidence supports what she disclosed. Dr. Reeves found clear signs of sexual trauma. We're building a solid case. I promise you that." She said his wife was there. "Helen, when I picked Emma up. She must have known something. She must have heard Emma crying or—" "We're looking at that too," Brennan interrupted gently. "Sometimes people know and don't act. Sometimes they're victims themselves of long-term manipulation. Sometimes they're complicit. We're going to find out which one Helen Warren is." Sarah felt hollowed out, like someone had scraped her insides clean and left nothing but echoing emptiness. "Can I take her home?" "Yes, but I need you to understand that your home is now part of the crime scene. We'll need to collect the bedding, Emma's clothes from today, her toothbrush for DNA comparison, anything Pastor Warren might have touched or given her. He's never been to our house." "Good. That's good. It keeps your home as a safe space for Emma." Brennan handed Sarah a card, white with raised black letters. "This has my direct line. Call me anytime, day or night. 24/7. I know this is impossible, but I need you to try something. Let Emma lead conversations about what happened. Don't ask her questions about the abuse. Let her tell you when she's ready. We have specialized forensic interviewers who know how to talk to children about trauma. They'll help her tell her story in a way that preserves the evidence and doesn't hurt her more." Sarah took the card with numb fingers. "How am I supposed to just not ask? She's my daughter, I know. But repeated questioning can traumatize children further and can also contaminate their testimony. It's one of the hardest things we ask parents to do, but it's crucial. We also have counselors who specialize in childhood sexual trauma. I'll have someone call you tomorrow to set up appointments. Emma will need support, and honestly, so will you." They left the hospital at nearly 2 a.m. Officer Martinez drove them home in her patrol car, the city dark and quiet around them. Sarah sat in the back with Emma, who had finally cried herself into an exhausted sleep, her head on Sarah's lap. "You did everything right tonight," Martinez said quietly, her eyes meeting Sarah's in the rearview mirror. "The moment you found the blood, you called. You didn't question Emma extensively. You didn't clean her up. You preserved the evidence. A lot of parents don't know to do that. You might have just saved other children too." "Other children?" The thought made Sarah's stomach turn. Men like Warren don't usually stop at one victim. If he did this to Emma, there are probably others. Your quick action, Emma's bravery in disclosing even part of it, means we can investigate fully. Check his computer, his phone, his house. Find out if there are other victims." Sarah stroked Emma's hair, still damp from the bath she'd scrubbed herself raw in. I should have known. I should have seen something. No. Don't do that to yourself. These predators are skilled manipulators. They choose positions of authority specifically so they'll be trusted. You did nothing wrong. Emma did nothing wrong. The only person responsible for this is David Warren. They pulled into Sarah's driveway. The house looked different now, marked by what had happened, by what Sarah had discovered inside. Martinez helped carry Emma in, still sleeping, and Sarah laid her in her own bed. She wasn't letting her daughter out of her sight ever again. Before Martinez left, she gave Sarah her card too. I'm assigned to this case. I'll be checking in regularly. If you need anything, call. Anything at all. Sarah stood in the doorway after Martinez left, watching the patrol car disappear down the street. The rain had stopped finally, leaving everything wet and glistening under streetlights. She locked the door, checked it twice, then went upstairs to her bedroom where Emma slept, curled small in the big bed. Sarah lay beside her, watching her daughter's face, memorizing it as if she might forget. Emma's nose twitched in sleep. Her eyelids fluttered with dreams Sarah hoped weren't nightmares. She was so small, so vulnerable, so impossibly precious. Sarah's phone buzzed. Diane. Sarah. You up? I've been so worried. Sarah's voice broke on her sister's name. Something terrible happened. Something so terrible I'm coming over. No, not tonight. She's finally sleeping. I just need to be with her. Tomorrow then. First thing, I'm taking the day off work. Thank you. What happened? Sarah told her. Whispered words in the dark while Emma slept. Told her about the blood, the hospital, the examination, the arrest. Heard her sister cry. Heard her rage. Heard her promise vengeance that Sarah knew would never come from anyone but the justice system. When she hung up, Sarah pulled Emma closer, careful not to wake her, and let herself cry. Silent tears that soaked into the pillow, that came from somewhere so deep she didn't know she had that much water in her body. She cried for Emma's innocence, stolen by a man who should have protected it. She cried for the blood on princess sheets. She cried for the way Emma had flinched from her touch. She cried for the special room in a basement, where monsters disguised as pastors hurt children and called it God's will. Outside, Riverside slept on, unaware that one of its pillars had crumbled, that darkness had been living in plain sight, wearing a collar and preaching sermons and helping children with their reading. Tomorrow, the town would wake to news of Pastor David Warren's arrest. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, Sarah held her daughter and promised into the darkness that she would fight, that she would get justice, that she would make sure Emma knew, every day for the rest of her life, that she was believed, that she was loved, that she was not broken but brave. Tonight, that was enough. Morning came gray and cold, the kind of October morning that promised rain before noon. Sarah hadn't slept, hadn't even closed her eyes. She'd spent the night watching Emma breathe, counting each inhale and exhale like prayers, terrified that if she looked away, her daughter might disappear or break into pieces that couldn't be put back together. Emma woke slowly, confused at first to find herself in her mother's bed. Then memory returned, visible as a shadow crossing her face, darkening her eyes. The transformation from sleepy child to traumatized victim happened in seconds. "Hi, baby," Sarah said softly, keeping her voice gentle. "How do you feel?" Sore. The word was small, matter of fact, and it broke Sarah's heart all over again. 6-year-olds shouldn't know that kind of sore. Shouldn't have to articulate pain in places they didn't even have names for yet. "I know, sweetheart. I'm so sorry." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Where's Pastor David?" "The police took him away last night. He can't hurt you anymore. He can't hurt anyone anymore." Emma's face crumpled. "But he's a pastor. He talks to God. God's gonna be mad at me for telling." Sarah sat up, pulling Emma gently into her lap despite the protest her back gave after a night on 2 hard pillows. "Listen to me very carefully. God is not mad at you. God loves you. What Pastor David did was wrong. It was evil. It was a sin. Not you. Never you. Do you understand? But he said God chose me. He said it was special. He lied, Emma. Pastors can lie. They're just people, and people can do terrible things sometimes. What he did had nothing to do with God. It was about him being bad, not you. A knock at the door interrupted them. Diane, Sarah's sister, stood on the porch with grocery bags and determination written across her face. She swept in without waiting for an invitation, her eyes red from crying. I brought breakfast, and I'm not leaving. Emma managed a small smile for her aunt, the first real emotion besides fear that Sarah had seen since last night. Diane had always been Emma's favorite, the fun aunt who gave extra birthday presents and snuck cookies before dinner. Aunt Di, Emma said, her voice small. Hey there, princess. Diane knelt down, not reaching out, letting Emma come to her. I heard you had a really hard night. Emma nodded, tears starting again. Well, I'm here now. And your mom and me, we're gonna make sure you're safe and loved every single second. Okay? Okay. Detective Brennan arrived at 10 o'clock, bringing with her a woman named Patricia, who worked for Child Protective Services, and another woman, younger with kind eyes, who introduced herself as Miss Carroll from the Child Advocacy Center. They sat in the living room while Emma watched cartoons in the kitchen with Diane, though Sarah could see her daughter wasn't really watching, just staring at the screen. We arrested Pastor Warren at 3 this morning, Brennan said without preamble. He's being held without bail on charges of child sexual assault. His wife, Helen, is cooperating with the investigation. Cooperating how? Sarah demanded. Did she know? Did that woman know and do nothing? Patricia, the CPS worker, leaned forward. Her face was weathered with the kind of exhaustion that came from seeing too many broken children. Helen claims she had no idea what was happening. She says David told her he was helping Emma with reading in his study upstairs. She stayed in the kitchen the whole time preparing meals. The whole time, Sarah repeated, her voice flat and dangerous. For 3 weeks, every Tuesday and Thursday, she never once went down to check on them. Never wondered why a 6-year-old needed 2 hours of phonics help. It is suspicious, Brennan admitted, but without evidence that she knew about the abuse. We can't charge her with anything related to the assault itself. However, Emma mentioned something last night about a basement room. We obtained a search warrant and went through the Warren house early this morning. Sarah's stomach turned. What did you find? Brennan exchanged glances with Patricia and Ms. Carroll, 3 professionals deciding how much truth one mother could handle. We found a room in the basement, separate from the main area. It was set up like a child's bedroom. Children's books, stuffed animals, a twin bed with princess sheets. She paused. And we found blood evidence. Cleaning supplies nearby, partially used. A laptop with disturbing content that our tech team is analyzing now. The room tilted. Sarah gripped the arm of the couch. How disturbing. Sarah. Brennan's voice was gentle but firm. I need you to prepare yourself for what I'm about to tell you. The laptop contained hundreds of images and videos. Other children. Some from the church congregation. Some we haven't identified yet. This wasn't a one-time incident. This was systematic, organized, ongoing abuse. The words didn't make sense at first. Sarah's brain couldn't process them. Hundreds. Other children. How many children? We're still investigating. But based on what we've found so far, we believe there are at least 6 victims from Riverside Community Church alone. Possibly more from previous cities where Warren served as pastor. Sarah thought she might vomit. 6 other families. Your daughter's bravery in disclosing this and your immediate action in calling 911 may have saved countless other children from experiencing what Emma did, Patricia said. You did everything right. I didn't do anything right. Sarah's voice cracked. I sent my baby to that monster's house. I believed him when he said he wanted to help her read. I trusted him because he was a pastor. That's exactly what predators like Warren count on, Brennan said. They choose positions of authority and trust specifically to gain access to victims. This is not your fault, Ms. Carroll spoke up, her voice soft. Sarah, Emma will need to do a forensic interview. It's a recorded conversation where I'll ask her about what happened in a way that's trauma-informed and legally sound. The recording can be used in court proceedings so Emma won't have to testify in front of Warren. Would you be comfortable with that? When? This afternoon if you think Emma's ready. The sooner we document her disclosure, the stronger the case. But only if she's willing. Sarah looked toward the kitchen where Emma sat with Diane, not watching cartoons, just existing in that dissociated space that trauma creates. I'll ask her, but I won't force her. But when Sarah explained what the forensic interview would involve, Emma surprised her. Her small voice was determined, fierce even. I want to tell. I don't want him to hurt other kids like he hurt me. The Forensic Interview Center was designed to look like a home rather than an institution. Comfortable couches, toys scattered around, artwork on the walls. Nothing that would remind a traumatized child of hospitals or police stations. Emma sat in a colorful room with Ms. Carroll while Sarah watched from another room through a one-way mirror, Detective Brennan beside her. Ms. Carroll started slow, asking Emma about her favorite things, her school, her friends, building rapport, establishing baseline communication patterns. Then gradually, carefully, she asked about Pastor David. Emma's voice was small but clear through the speakers. He said I was special, that God chose me for special lessons because I was pure. What kind of lessons? Ms. Carroll asked, her tone never changing, always gentle and curious. First it was just reading. We'd sit at a table and he'd help me sound out words. He was nice then. He smelled like coffee and he had a funny laugh. Emma paused, her hands twisting in her lap. Then he started sitting closer, touching my hair. Said it was pretty like angel hair. Sarah watched her daughter through the glass, every muscle in her body tensed, wanting to burst through and hold her, knowing she couldn't. Then one day, maybe 2 weeks ago, he said we were going to play a special game. A secret game that only special children got to play. He took me downstairs to a room I'd never seen before. It had a bed, and toys, and books. He said it was the angel room. Can you tell me about the angel room? Ms. Carroll's voice remained steady, professional, though Sarah could see her jaw tighten. It was in the basement. There were no windows. He locked the door behind us. I asked why, and he said it was to keep the angel's secrets safe. He said God wanted us to make each other feel good, like angels do in heaven. The clinical description that followed was worse than Sarah had imagined. Emma's small voice recounted details no child should know, using words she'd obviously learned from Warren to describe acts that made Sarah's vision blur with rage and grief. Ms. Carroll guided her gently, never pushing, always giving Emma control over when to pause or stop. Did he touch you? Ms. Carroll asked. Yes. Emma's voice got smaller. Can you show me on this picture where he touched you? Ms. Carroll produced a simple outline drawing of a child's body. Emma pointed, her little finger indicating places no child should have to indicate. She described what happened in simple, horrifying terms that carried the weight of truth. The pain, the confusion, the way Pastor David prayed afterward, thanking God for Emma's sacrifice. Did you tell anyone before your mom found out? Ms. Carroll asked. I wanted to tell Mommy. Every time after, I wanted to tell her. But he said if I told, God would send Mommy to hell forever. He said he'd know if I told because God tells him everything. He said little girls who break God's secrets get their mommies taken away and never see them again. Sarah was crying silently, Brennan's hand on her shoulder the only thing keeping her anchored. Did anyone else see what happened in the angel room? Emma's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Mrs. Helen came down once. It was last week on Thursday. Pastor David was pulling up his pants and I was crying because it hurt really bad. She opened the door without knocking. She looked at me and she looked at him and she didn't say anything. She just looked real mad, and then she closed the door and went back upstairs. Brennan swore under her breath beside Sarah. We've got her. The interview continued for another 30 minutes, Ms. Carroll patient and thorough, documenting every detail that might be relevant for the investigation. When it was over, Emma looked exhausted but somehow lighter, as if sharing the weight had eased it even just slightly. In the car afterward, Emma said something that broke Sarah's heart and mended it at the same time. Ms. Carroll believed me. She didn't think I was lying. Of course she believed you, baby. Everyone believes you. Pastor David said no one would believe me because he's important and I'm just a kid. You're not just anything. You're the most important person in the world to me. News spread through Riverside like wildfire by that evening. Pastor David Warren, beloved community leader, arrested on charges of child sexual assault. His photo, usually shown in church newsletters with his warm smile and pristine robes, now appeared as a mugshot on every local news channel. Sarah's phone rang constantly. Church members, some supportive, some skeptical. One woman, Nancy from the church council, actually had the audacity to ask, "Are you sure Emma isn't confused? Pastor David has done so much for this community. Maybe she misunderstood something innocent." Sarah hung up on her, but others came forward with support and, more heartbreakingly, with similar stories. By the next morning, 3 more families had contacted Detective Brennan. Their children, too, had been to the pastor's house for special tutoring. Their children, too, had changed afterward, become withdrawn or fearful or obsessed with bathing. One mother, Teresa, called Sarah directly. "My daughter Sophia is 7. She went to Pastor David's for help with her math. She came home different, too, but I thought it was just growing pains. Then I saw the news and I asked her, really asked her, and she told me." Teresa was crying. He did the same things to Sophia. The special room, the games, the lies about God. Sarah felt simultaneous relief that she wasn't alone and horror that other children had suffered. "Have you called the police? Detective Brennan is coming to interview Sophia this afternoon. But I wanted to call you first. I wanted to say thank you. If you hadn't called 911, if Emma hadn't been brave enough to tell, Sophia might still be going to that house. Other girls might still be going." 2 weeks passed in a strange new rhythm that became normal faster than Sarah thought possible. Therapy appointments twice a week with Dr. Linda Morrison, a child psychologist who specialized in trauma. The waiting room had toys and books, none with religious themes, a deliberate choice Sarah appreciated. Dr. Morrison was younger than Sarah expected, maybe mid-30s, with kind eyes and a voice that felt like warm honey. She met with Emma alone for the first session, then called Sarah in at the end. "Emma is remarkably resilient," Dr. Morrison said, "but she's carrying a lot of guilt and fear. She believes she did something wrong, that she somehow caused the abuse, and she's terrified that her disclosure will result in punishment from God or loss of you. We're going to work on reframing those beliefs." "How long will it take?" Sarah asked, knowing the question was naive even as she asked it. Healing isn't linear. There's no timeline for recovering from sexual trauma, especially for children. But Emma has protective factors in her favor. She has you, a supportive mother who believes her. She's getting intervention early. She has access to quality mental health care. These things matter enormously. Emma went willingly to therapy, though she always asked the same question afterward. "Did I do good?" "You always do good, baby. Just by being you." Legal proceedings moved forward with bureaucratic efficiency. Detective Brennan kept Sarah informed of every development. Helen Warren was arrested on charges of child endangerment and failure to report abuse. Emma's testimony about Helen seeing them in the basement room and walking away provided the evidence needed. Helen's arrest made the news too. Her mugshot showed a woman who looked 10 years older than she had 2 weeks ago. Her perfect pearls and cardigan replaced by an orange jumpsuit and hollow eyes. She posted bail immediately and disappeared into her lawyer's office. Released a statement claiming she was a victim of her husband's deception, that she had no idea what was happening in her own home. But the evidence said otherwise. Meanwhile, David Warren remained in jail, his bail denied after prosecutors argued. He was both a flight risk and a danger to the community. His laptop revealed not just images and videos of his own crimes, but connections to other predators, online forums where he shared advice on grooming children, bragged about his access as a pastor. The FBI got involved. Homeland Security. The investigation expanded beyond Riverside to previous cities where Warren had served. Turned out he'd been a pastor in 3 other states over the past 15 years. In each location, There had been whispers, concerns raised and dismissed. Families who had moved away without explanation. Brennan came to Sarah's house with an FBI agent named Marcus Chen to explain. "We've identified at least 12 victims across 4 states," Chen said, his face grim. "Possibly more." Warren was careful, methodical. He targeted single mothers, offered to help their children, groomed both the kids and the parents simultaneously. Single mothers, Sarah repeated, the pattern obvious now. Women who were vulnerable, who needed help. Exactly. And he used his position as a pastor to make himself seem safe, trustworthy. It's a common predator tactic. The preliminary hearing came in December, 3 months after that terrible October night. Sarah sat in the courtroom with Emma, who clutched a stuffed rabbit Dr. Morrison had given her. Around them sat other families, other mothers with other traumatized children, all bound by the same nightmare. Helen Warren sat across the aisle, thin and hollow-eyed, transformed from the smiling casserole woman into a ghost of herself. She never looked at the victims or their families, just stared straight ahead, as if by not seeing them, she could make them cease to exist. David Warren was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed, his face blank. He looked smaller somehow, less impressive without his robes and pulpit. He glanced toward the victims' families once, his eyes scanning the rows of people whose lives he'd destroyed, before his lawyer leaned in and whispered something that made him look away. When Warren's eyes passed over Emma, the little girl pressed closer to Sarah and whispered, "He looks at me like he owns me." Sarah wrapped her arms around her daughter. "He doesn't own you. He owns nothing. You own yourself." The DA, a serious woman named Catherine Ross, who treated the children with respect and gravity, presented evidence methodically. Medical records showing Emma's injuries, forensic analysis of the basement room that revealed blood evidence from multiple victims. The laptop contents described in clinical terms that still made the gallery gasp. Testimony from the other families whose children Warren had abused. Ms. Carroll's forensic interview video was played for the judge. The courtroom fell silent as Emma's small voice filled the space, describing in careful detail what Pastor David had done to her in the angel room. Several people left the courtroom crying. One man vomited in the hallway. The defense attorney, a slick man in an expensive suit whose moral compass was apparently for sale, argued for bail reduction. Pastor Warren is a respected community leader with no prior criminal record. He has deep ties to the community. The allegations, while serious, are based primarily on children's testimony, which can be unreliable. DA Ross stood, her voice cutting through the courtroom like a blade. "Your Honor, the defendant systematically abused his position of trust to prey on vulnerable children over a period of at least 15 years. He used religious authority to manipulate and silence his victims, telling them God would punish them if they spoke. He documented his crimes on digital media. He has connections throughout multiple states that could facilitate flight. The people request he remain held without bail." The judge, an older woman with silver hair and steel eyes, barely hesitated. "Bail remains denied. The defendant's alleged crimes demonstrate a pattern of predatory behavior, exploitation of trust, and potential danger to the community. He will remain in custody pending trial." David Warren's face crumpled. He tried to speak, to plead his case, but the bailiff was already leading him away. His eyes met Sarah's one last time, and what she saw there wasn't remorse or shame. It was rage that he'd been caught. Helen's hearing was separate, quieter, less dramatic. She pleaded not guilty to charges of child endangerment and failure to report abuse. Her attorney argued she was a victim too, manipulated by her husband, unaware of the extent of his crimes. But Emma's testimony was damning. That moment when Helen had opened the door, seen them, and chosen to walk away. "My client is a traumatized woman who didn't fully comprehend what she witnessed," her attorney argued. DA Ross had video footage ready. "Your Honor, we have testimony from Emma Mitchell that on October 15th, Helen Warren opened the door to the basement room and saw her husband with Emma, who was crying and partially undressed. Mrs. Warren looked at the scene, closed the door, and went upstairs where she continued preparing dinner as if nothing had happened. This wasn't a failure to comprehend. This was a conscious choice to prioritize her own comfort over a child's safety. The judge set trial dates for both defendants. David Warren's trial for March, Helen's for February. Justice moved slowly, but it moved. Winter passed in a blur of therapy appointments, legal meetings, and slow healing. Emma started sleeping in her own bed again, though she needed a nightlight and her door left open. She laughed more easily, though certain things still triggered her. A locked door, a basement entrance, the smell of coffee, religious imagery. They found a new church, a small congregation led by a woman named Reverend Sarah. Not a coincidence, Sarah thought, that her daughter might find comfort with a female pastor who shared her mother's name. Reverend Sarah met with Emma personally before they attended services. "I want you to know something," Reverend Sarah said, kneeling to Emma's level. "God loves you, not because of what you do or don't do, not because of what anyone does to you, just because you exist. That's all he needs. Your existence is enough." Emma cried then, the kind of crying that releases something toxic. "Pastor David said I had to earn God's love, that I was chosen, but I had to be good. Pastor David lied about a lot of things. God's love isn't earned, it's freely given, always." They started attending services, sitting in the back, ready to leave if Emma felt uncomfortable. But she surprised Sarah by engaging, by singing the songs, by listening to Reverend Sarah's sermons about grace and forgiveness, and the difference between earthly betrayal and divine love. Dr. Morrison explained it one session when Sarah expressed concern about Emma wanting to return to church. Religion was weaponized against her. She needs to reclaim it on her own terms, separate it from the abuse. If she can learn that God and Pastor David are not the same thing, that faith and betrayal are not synonymous, it could be incredibly healing. Therapy sessions revealed layers of trauma Sarah hadn't anticipated. Emma struggled with nightmares where she was sent to hell for telling secrets. She struggled with guilt, convinced she'd somehow caused the abuse. She struggled with body shame, with feeling dirty or broken. Dr. Morrison gave Emma tools, drawing techniques to externalize feelings, breathing exercises for anxiety, narrative therapy to rewrite her story from victim to survivor. The work was slow, painful, exhausting, but it was working. One evening in January, almost 3 months after that terrible October night, Emma came to Sarah with a drawing. Not dark scribbles this time, but a garden full of flowers, a bright sun, a mother and daughter holding hands. "Dr. Linda says I'm not growing bigger," Emma explained. "I'm growing stronger. See?" She pointed to the drawing. "This is me after. I have flowers growing out of me now." Sarah hung the drawing on the refrigerator, next to Emma's improving spelling tests, and her soccer schedule, and all the normal markers of childhood that had seemed impossible months ago. Life was finding a rhythm again. Different from before, but sustainable. The trial started in March on a cold Tuesday morning. Sarah took a week off work, determined to attend every moment. Diane came too, and Teresa, Sophia's mother, and the other families whose children had been victimized. They filled 3 rows of the courtroom, a silent army of mothers and fathers demanding justice. David Warren's defense was predictable. The children were confused. The evidence was circumstantial. The prosecution was engaging in a witch hunt against a man of God. His lawyer painted him as a devoted pastor who had made innocent mistakes that were misinterpreted by suggestible children. But the evidence was overwhelming. Medical experts testified about the injuries consistent with sexual abuse. Forensic analysts explained the blood evidence in the basement room. FBI agents detailed the laptop contents, the connections to other predators, the online forums where Warren had bragged about his access to children. The other victims testified, including Sophia and 2 girls from Warren's previous churches who had found the courage to come forward. Their testimonies were remarkably consistent, describing the same pattern of grooming, the same special room, the same lies about God and secrets and punishment. Emma didn't have to testify in person. Her forensic interview video was played for the jury instead. 12 strangers watched a 6-year-old girl describe horrors that made several jury members cry openly. When it was over, the courtroom was silent, except for muffled sobs from the gallery. Warren's lawyer tried to discredit the children. suggested they'd been coached, implied their mothers had influenced their testimony. But D.A. Ross was ready with expert witnesses, who explained that the level of detail and consistency across multiple victims made coaching impossible. Children don't lie about sexual abuse, Dr. Morrison testified. They sometimes fail to disclose due to fear or shame, but false allegations of this nature from multiple children with matching details? That doesn't happen. The defense called character witnesses, members of Warren's congregation who testified to his kindness, his dedication, his service to the community. But their testimonies rang hollow against the weight of evidence. The trial lasted 8 days. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood and read the verdict with a clear, strong voice. Guilty on all counts. 12 counts of sexual assault of a minor, multiple counts of exploitation of a child, possession and distribution of child pornography. The list went on. David Warren showed no emotion as his fate was sealed. Just sat there, blank-faced, as if he couldn't quite comprehend that his carefully constructed world had finally collapsed. Helen's trial came 2 weeks later, faster and less dramatic. The evidence was straightforward. Emma had testified that Helen saw them in the basement room and walked away. Other evidence suggested Helen had known for longer than she claimed. Investigators found emails between Helen and David from years prior, discussing the girls who come for special lessons in vague terms that could have been innocent, but in context clearly weren't. They found credit card receipts for the children's items in the basement room, purchases Helen had made. Her defense crumbled under the weight of willful ignorance turned complicity. The jury found her guilty of child endangerment and failure to report. Not as severe as David's crimes, but damning nonetheless. Sentencing came in May, 6 months after Sarah had found blood on Princess sheets and called 911. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled with victims' families, journalists, advocates for children's safety, and curious onlookers drawn by the scandal. The judge allowed victim impact statements. Sarah stood at the podium, Emma beside her holding her stuffed rabbit, and read from a prepared statement with a steady voice that belied the trembling in her hands. My daughter was 6 years old when Pastor David Warren used his position of authority and trust to assault her repeatedly. He took her innocence, her sense of safety, her ability to trust adults in positions of power. He used God as a weapon against her, telling her she'd go to hell if she told the truth, that I'd be taken away from her forever. But my daughter is braver than he ever imagined. She told the truth. She faced her fear. And because of her bravery, other children are safe now. Emma had written her own statement in crayon with Dr. Morrison's help. Sarah read it for her, Emma's small hand in hers. You made me scared of God, but my mommy says God is love and you are hate. You made me feel dirty, but Dr. Linda says I'm not dirty, you're dirty. I'm not scared of you anymore. You can't hurt me now because I'm stronger than you. Other families gave their statements. Teresa talked about Sophia's nightmares and panic attacks. Another mother described how her daughter had attempted suicide at age 10 because she couldn't carry the secret anymore. Another father broke down crying, unable to finish his statement, overcome by rage and grief. Through it all, David Warren sat impassive, showing no remorse, no acknowledgement of the lives he'd destroyed. His lawyer had advised him not to speak, and he followed that advice, remaining silent as victim after victim detailed the damage he'd caused. The judge, her face grave, addressed Warren directly. Mr. Warren, you used your position as a religious leader to prey on vulnerable children. You manipulated their faith, their trust, their innocence for your own gratification. You showed no mercy to your victims, and the court will show no mercy to you. I hereby sentence you to 45 years in prison, without possibility of parole. You will likely die behind bars, and that is exactly what you deserve. The gallery erupted in applause, quickly silenced by the bailiff, but the sentiment was clear. Justice, imperfect and belated, had been served. Helen's sentencing was less dramatic. 5 years in prison with possibility of parole after 3. Her lawyer had negotiated a plea agreement in exchange for her testimony against David. It didn't seem like enough to Sarah, but D.A. Ross explained the complexities. Helen was complicit, but she wasn't the primary abuser. The law recognizes that distinction, and her testimony helped cement David's conviction. Without it, His defense might have created reasonable doubt. Outside the courthouse after sentencing, reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed, microphones were thrust forward, questions shouted from all directions. Sarah shielded Emma and tried to hurry to their car, but one question stopped her. "Mrs. Mitchell, what message do you have for other parents?" Sarah turned back to the cameras, Emma's hand in hers, and spoke from her heart. "Listen to your children. Trust your instincts. And know that predators don't look like monsters. They look like pillars of the community. They look like people you trust. If something feels wrong, investigate. Ask questions. Believe your children when they tell you something happened. Don't let anyone, not even a man of God, make you doubt your parental instincts." The clip aired on every local news station that night and went viral nationally by morning. Sarah's phone exploded with messages, some supportive, some critical, some from other parents sharing their own stories of near misses and actual abuse. Life slowly found a new rhythm over the following months. Emma continued therapy, her sessions spacing out from twice weekly to once weekly to twice monthly as she healed and grew stronger. The nightmares became less frequent, the panic attacks rare, the shame and guilt processed and reframed with Dr. Morrison's patient help. She started second grade in the fall at her new school, made new friends who knew nothing about Pastor David or the trial or the way she'd been broken and put back together. To them, she was just Emma, the girl with wild auburn curls and a gap-toothed smile, and an impressive collection of drawings featuring gardens and phoenixes and girls breaking chains. Sarah joined a support group for parents of abuse survivors, sat in church basements with strangers who became friends, bonded by shared trauma and collective healing, heard their stories, shared her own, found that speaking about it again and again slowly drained the poison from the wound. One woman's son had been abused by a coach, another's daughter by a family friend, a man's two sons by their grandfather. The faces of predators were varied, but the patterns were always the same. Trust exploited, authority weaponized, innocence stolen, and always the survivors left to pick up pieces and rebuild. Emma started painting as a new form of expression, a hobby Dr. Morrison encouraged. Her paintings were vibrant and alive, full of color and movement and hope. One showed a girl with red hair standing on a mountain, sun rising behind her. Another showed hands reaching up from darkness toward light. Yet another showed a garden growing from cracked ground. Sarah bought frames for all of them, hung them throughout the house. Emma's art became a visual timeline of her healing, each piece marking progress, growth, transformation from victim to survivor to thriver. On the first anniversary of calling 911, Sarah took Emma to the beach, far from Riverside and its memories. They walked along the shore collecting shells, watching waves crash against rocks, feeling salt spray on their faces and sand between their toes. "Mommy," Emma said, her voice thoughtful, "am I going to be okay?" Sarah knelt in the sand, taking her daughter's face in her hands, looking into eyes that had seen too much, but still held light. "You already are okay. You're more than okay. You're extraordinary. But I'm different now. I'm not the same Emma I was before." "No," Sarah said honestly. "You're not. But different doesn't mean broken. You survived something terrible, and you're still here, still laughing, still loving, still being brilliantly, beautifully you. That's not broken, baby, that's triumph." Emma thought about this, her small face serious, processing in that way children do when learning profound truths. Then she smiled, that gap-toothed smile Sarah loved more than anything in the world. "I'm a survivor. Dr. Linda says survivors are the strongest people there are." Dr. Linda is absolutely right. They stayed until sunset, watching the sky turn orange and pink and purple, the colors bleeding into each other like watercolors. Emma drew pictures in the sand with a stick, stories of adventure and bravery and dragons defeated by girls with red hair and big hearts. The tide came in and washed them away, but that was okay. Tomorrow she would draw new ones. Driving home in the dark, Emma fell asleep in the back seat, her stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest, her face peaceful in the glow of passing streetlights. Sarah watched her in the rear-view mirror and thought about that terrible night when everything changed. The blood on the sheets. The desperate 911 call. The fear that had consumed everything. But she also thought about the strength they'd found. The community that had rallied. The justice that had been served. The healing that was happening, slow but sure, like flowers growing through cracks in concrete. Her phone buzzed at a stoplight. Detective Brennan. Just wanted you to know Warren's appeal was denied. And the FBI investigation led to arrests in 3 other states. Men he was connected to online. Your decision to call 911 that night, Emma's bravery in speaking up, it had ripple effects we're still discovering. How many children? Sarah asked, knowing the number would be high, bracing herself. At least 30 that we know of. Probably more we'll never identify. But because Emma spoke up, because you believed her and acted immediately, we're stopping it now. Every day those men are in prison is a day children are safer. Sarah thanked her and hung up. She thought about all the parents who would never make the call she made, who would convince themselves they were wrong, who would choose doubt over protection. She thought about the systems that had failed, the institutions that protected predators over victims, the way society made it easier to dismiss children's voices than to confront uncomfortable truths. But she also thought about the ones who would hear Emma's story and be brave enough to believe their own children, the ones who would trust their instincts, the ones who would choose their children over their comfort, truth over convenience, protection over reputation. They pulled into their driveway. Home. Safe. Together. The porch light was on, casting warm yellow light over the front steps. Inside, Diane had stayed to prepare dinner. Probably soup and fresh bread. Comfort food for coming home. Sarah carried Emma inside, still sleeping, and tucked her into her own bed. Emma stirred slightly, smiled in her sleep, and settled deeper into her pillow. Sarah smoothed the wild auburn curls back from her daughter's forehead and whispered the same thing she whispered every night. You are loved. You are safe. You are mine. And you are so much stronger than you know. Emma stirred, her eyes fluttering open for just a moment. I know, Mommy. I can feel it. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. More therapy. More growing. More learning to be Emma after trauma rather than Emma defined by trauma. But tonight, they had this. Peace. Safety. Hope. A future that looked different than the past but held possibility nonetheless. Sarah watched her daughter drift back to sleep, then went downstairs where Diane waited with soup and understanding, and the kind of love that doesn't ask questions, but simply shows up with groceries and determination. Outside, Riverside slept on, changed by what had happened, by the revelation that darkness could wear a collar and preach sermons and help children with their reading. The community had fractured and was slowly, painfully rebuilding itself with new awareness, new protocols, new commitment to protecting the vulnerable. But in this house, in this moment, there was just a mother and her daughter, and the aunt who loved them both. There was soup and safety, and the absolute certainty that they had survived the worst and were still standing. And that, Sarah thought as she sat down to eat with her sister, was everything.